Today, we're not just looking at society, we're going to look at the code that runs it. I mean, the hidden architecture of power that really shapes who gets ahead, who struggles, and maybe most importantly, how we end up feeling about our own place in the world. We're going to unpack the psychological blueprint that determines not just our opportunities, but our own deep sense of self-worth. This is all about the invisible systems that get right inside our heads. The most dangerous lie in social life is not the one told to you, but the one you tell yourself to justify a system that limits your potential. Now think about that for a second. This isn't just a clever phrase, it's a diagnosis of a really profound psychological mechanism. See, the lies that other people tell us, well, we can spot those, we can debate them, we can reject them. But the one we tell ourselves, that's a different beast entirely. That one operates from the inside, disguised as our own logic, our own common sense. It's at critical moment the system achieves its goal, when people start quietly enforcing their own limitations, convincing themselves the walls of the maze are not only real, but that they probably deserve to be there. So let's take that big, powerful idea and bring it right down to earth. Let's talk about the feeling, the very real, often very heavy emotional weight this whole system produces in our day-to-day lives. I mean, really think about it for a minute. That sinking feeling after a job rejection, or when a promotion you were perfect for goes to someone else. That sense that no matter how hard you pedal, you're just not getting anywhere. It's that nagging little voice in the back of your head that whispers, the problem isn't the situation or the economy or the system, it's you. This is an incredibly common and, a deeply isolating experience. It's like running on a treadmill, getting completely exhausted, and then looking in the mirror and blaming your own legs for not moving forward. All of this creates what you could call an emotional imbalance. It's not just feeling disappointed after a setback. No, it's deeper. It's a more pervasive state of mind where your individual effort feels completely disconnected from the results you're getting. This fog of confusion, this persistent feeling of maybe just not being good enough, this isn't an accident. It's a predictable, almost engineered symptom of a much larger system at play, a system specifically designed to make you look inward for blame instead of outward for answers. And this right here, this is the core psychological trick. This is the exact moment that control shifts. The system's true power, its genius if you can call it that, lies in its ability to get you to change the fundamental question you're asking. By redirecting your focus inward, from the system to the self, it takes all the pressure off the external structure. This shift, it leads to a kind of paralysis. It stops any real challenge to the status quo, because you're way too busy trying to fix yourself. Okay, so if this feeling of personal failure is the symptom, what's the actual disease? We're going to pull back the curtain now and look at the machine itself, the blueprint for the social hierarchy that's generating all these feelings in the first place. So the foundational concept here is what's known as Group-Based Hierarchy, or GBH. Now, this isn't about certain individuals being better or worse. It's about one group, historically, setting up a system that channels power, wealth, and opportunity mainly toward its own members. And here's the crucial part. It maintains this order not primarily through overt force, which is messy, expensive, and tends to breed rebellion, but through a much subtler and frankly more efficient tool, ideology. It's about winning hearts and minds, including the hearts and minds of those the system puts at a disadvantage. So how does this hierarchy actually operate on a daily basis? It works through something called institutional discrimination. This is the action part of the equation. It's the process of embedding a preference for the dominant group right into the official rules of the game. Think of a company where the promotion criteria just happen to favor leadership styles more common in one culture than another. Or a school admissions algorithm that, without anyone intending it to, penalizes students from certain neighborhoods. It makes inequality seem like the normal, natural outcome of just doing business. It's not one person being biased, it's the system itself that has the bias baked right in. And this right here, this brings us to the system's secret weapon. You could call it its propaganda engine. Legitimizing myths. These are the powerful stories a society tells itself to make the unequal outcomes we just talked about feel fair, to make them feel justified. These myths are the psychological glue that holds the entire structure together, convincing everyone, both at the top and the bottom, that this is just the way things are and the way they're supposed to be. Let's make this real with some concrete examples. You've got the old idea of natural superiority, the notion that one group is just inherently better at certain things, whether that's leadership or math or art, or, here's a really powerful one, the belief in a pure meritocracy.
This is the story that society is a perfectly level playing field where the best and brightest always rise to the top. This myth is incredibly effective because if you believe it, what's the only conclusion you can draw about people who don't rise? Well, they just mustn't have been good enough. And then you have these narratives of cultural destiny, stories suggesting some groups are just fated for success. These aren't just harmless opinions, they're powerful narrative tools used to justify the social order.
And this just nails the endgame perfectly. This is the crucial point. When the people in the subordinate group start to actually believe the legitimizing myths themselves, the system doesn't need much external enforcement anymore. They start to police their own ambitions and the ambitions of people around them, all based on a story that was created to justify their own disadvantage. The prison, at that point, needs no guards because the inmates believe they belong there. I mean, this all sounds incredibly effective, almost like a perfect system of control. So you have to ask, why does it work so well on us? Why are our minds so vulnerable to this kind of influence? Let's dive into the psychology of it and see how this system exploits two really fundamental parts of human nature. The whole system really pulls on two powerful psychological levers inside all of us. On one side, you have our deep, almost primal need to belong, to be approved of by our social group. And on the other, you've got our brain's tendency to just give up when it's faced with what it thinks is an impossible task. So let's break down how each of these is used against us. First up, our need for approval. Look, we are social animals, through and through. For our ancestors, being cast out of the group was basically a death sentence, and that deep fear is still wired into our brains. The system uses this. If you challenge the dominant myth, you risk being labeled. You're difficult, a troublemaker, not a team player. The social cost is incredibly high. So what do most of us do? We conform. Believing the myth, or at least acting like you do, becomes a defense mechanism. It's a way to fit in, to be safe. It's easier to belong than it is to stand all alone.
Now, the second trap is something called learned helplessness. This is fascinating. When you repeatedly face barriers that you just can't seem to get past, and you're constantly being fed a story for why you're failing, your brain does a little cost-benefit analysis. It's like a computer realizing an operation is using way too much energy for zero results. It logically concludes that continuing to fight is a waste of precious cognitive fuel, so it stops trying. Now, this isn't laziness, it's a cognitive survival mechanism. But the result is a psychological surrender, a giving up of your own personal agency, because the system has taught you, through repeated failure, that trying is useless.
Okay, so we've just broken down a really powerful system of control. But here's the good news. Understanding the mechanics of a trap is always the first step to disarming it. So let's shift our focus. We are moving from diagnosis to strategy. We've seen the blueprint of the system. Now let's look at the playbook for how you can actually rewrite the code.
All right, the primary strategic objective is this. You have to learn to separate the outcome from the myth used to justify it. You have to see the inequality for what it is, a structural result, and see the story for what it is, a tool of control. The moment you can see the gap between those two things, the gap between, say, a company's leadership being all from one demographic, and the story that they just hired the best people, the myth starts to lose its power. That gap is where your leverage is. So I want to give you a tool, a question that acts like a key. The next time you see an unequal outcome, whether it's at work or in the news or anywhere, ask yourself this. Don't ask if it's fair. Ask what story is being used to make this feel fair. That simple act of deconstruction is the first and most powerful step toward reclaiming your own perspective. Okay, so the full counter strategy unfolds in 3 clear steps. First, like we just talked about, you deconstruct the dominant myth by asking that critical question. Second, you build a positive counter identity. And third, for those who want to ethically influence the system, you deploy a new, better myth. Let's just zoom in on step 2 for a second, because this is absolutely critical. Remember how the system weaponizes our need for approval? Well, a strong, positive identity within your own group gives you an alternative source of that approval. If your sense of belonging and self-worth comes from your community, from its history and its shared values, you no longer need the validation of the dominant group. Their myths and their labels, they just lose their sting. This positive identity becomes a kind of psychological shield, neutralizing their power to make you conform. And that brings us to the most advanced strategy, fighting myths with better myths. An equality-enhancing legitimizing myth, or an EELM, doesn't just argue that equality is morally right, which, can put people on the defensive. Instead, it reframes equality as a strategic advantage for everyone. This is the narrative that diverse teams are more innovative.
It's the data-driven argument that equitable systems are more stable and productive because they unlock the full potential of the entire workforce. It changes the code of the system from the inside by aligning fairness with tangible bottom-line success.
And this really is the ultimate strategic insight here. Pushing against a hierarchy with brute force often just makes it push back harder. The more elegant, the more effective path is to change the underlying beliefs, the code that's running the system in the first place. If you can change the story, you can change the world.
So what's the single biggest takeaway from all this? It's this realization. Social hierarchy is not like gravity. It's not a law of nature. It is a design. It was built by people, which means it can be understood, it can be analyzed, and it could even be redesigned. Just seeing the structure for what it is, that's the beginning of your freedom from it.
And that's the thought I really want to leave you with. Your most powerful defense, the most powerful shield you own, is curiosity. It's the willingness to question the stories you've been told, and maybe even more importantly, to question the beliefs you hold about yourself. Because every belief you leave unexamined is a handle that someone else can grab to pull your strings.